Everybody, welcome back to What the Flick. I'm Matt, that's Alonzo, and joining us right now are Kim and John. We are talking about Westworld, Season 2, Episode 4.
The Riddle of the Sphinx.
The Riddle of the Sphinx. And lots of stuff goes down. A lot of plot advancement in this, and they're continuing to play with the bouncing around of timelines. One of the things that I liked about this particular episode is that you get to really kind of inhabit and see Bernard not understand if he's experiencing something at the moment or if it's a memory that's playing out. And there's that moment where he realizes that, which we hadn't really got before. And I kind of like where he could see, oh, I'm just remembering this.
Well, you're not with me, are you, Elsie?
Yeah. Is this now?
Yeah.
I think there's a potential third layer. It could be that he's experiencing it, or that it's his memory, or maybe that it's someone else's memory. One of the theories.
Arnold's memory or someone else's?
A previous
like a programmer.
Bernard. So look, one of the questions is who's the other human host? And there's, I think, good reason to believe it's several different people, but one is that perhaps that is actually Arnold. That he's having flashbacks to Bernard or something like that, and then the memories have been implanted. Somebody pointed out that we have obviously two different timelines of someone who looks like Bernard.
Okay.
And in one of them, I believe he has a scar, and in one he does not. And it's apparently the later one where he no longer has the scar, which would provide some reason to believe that it might not literally be the same body.
So like
It's
Delos,
complex,
they keep
obviously.
making new ones when the old ones wear off.
Maybe, or that maybe one is a host and one is a human reincarnation.
This is too much, John.
Yeah, that's...
Tell me about it.
Well, one of the things we get out of this episode is this is the first time that we really get a sense of what Delos was really trying to achieve outside of just having this amusement park,
I was so excited. I mean, just from the beginning clips of last time on Westworld, and it's like, they're doing transhumanism.
Yeah, or they're trying to.
They're
right?
failing at transhumanism.
Right, because we're still unclear. Bernard could have just been written to have experiences, but not actually be, like maybe they just wrote it as opposed to actually transferred it, right? Because I'm wondering if the difference with Old Man Delos is they've tried to actually do the transfer, like they saved everything and do a transfer versus somebody says, oh, I'm just gonna write this robot to think that it's Arnold.
Yeah, you get into a philosophical discussion about what the difference in that actually is.
It really reminded me of that one Black Mirror episode, San Junipero, when they had that heaven on earth thing. And it was just like, well, are they really living on, or like just a simulacrum? Is it the same thing? If you can't tell, does it matter? You know, it was an interesting philosophical point they made.
Yeah, there's I think a Silverberg's set of books about that, the Heechee books that kind of get into that. Anyway, yeah, it's one of the things I like about this show is that, and this particular episode does a lot of that. Some people have been complaining that there's too much like kind of driving the plot forward and oh, we gotta wait because we're not ready for this yet. And to me, there's 3 or 4 different plot lines happening and I have no idea where any of them are going or how they work together or what the overarching narrative of the whole series is, and I kind of don't care because I love it. But you're not as happy about that.
Well, I don't know. What's starting to get on my nerves is all of season 1 was about the man in black trying to figure out the maze and getting to the center and all that stuff. And then, you know, once all of that gets resolved and you know, we have the Anthony Hopkins character, Ford, like throwing everything into chaos. But no, it turns out Ford created another game that now he has to figure out and solve this one. And so I think, okay, this is just going to be this Ouroboros that never ends. Where like season 3, there's going to be this other game and this other hidden maze and this other da-da-da. And I don't see what the end point is. And for me, there are times where shows get so up the ass of their own like mythology that it stops being fun. Like I stopped watching the Venture Brothers for this reason. Because somewhere in season 3, they got so wrapped up in their own crazy universe, which was supposed to be a joke in the first place, that the show itself stopped being funny. And this show, I think, has and still has interesting ideas about, you know, the nature of the soul and mechanization and, you know, the limits of technology and all that kind of stuff. But it's also so wrapped up in pulling the rug out and having this sort of endless series of mysteries upon mysteries within enigmas within riddles. It's why I never watched Lost. And I've been reading people online who say this show is starting to remind me of Lost and I don't like that.
I think one of the things that, look, I'm enjoying it, and I'll follow whatever storyline you want to put on the screen. It'll be cool. It'll be interesting. But I'm a little bit confused about what we're supposed to be emotionally invested in season 2. That in 1, it was about, we know that these hosts are going to become sentient, and everything sort of is tied into that. But now, the sort of rebellion of the hosts feels very separate to what the season seems to be concerned with. Like, we thought it was going to be, they all become sentient, but now it looks like it's like Dolores and maybe 1 or 2 others, and everybody else is still off doing whatever they want. What she's doing seems completely disconnected from what the Man in Black is doing. Ford's whole thing now seems like the show has really lost interest in it. There's some connection to what this new version of the game may be, but apparently he was off worrying about sentience and hosts, but at the same time there's all these other parks where that's not happening, and the Man in Black is experimenting with human cloning, which is separate from that. It seems like the show has lost interest in the core premise.
It is happening though.
Yeah, it is happening.
Right? In the Raj, they were waking up. It looked like in the preview it might happen in
But was Ford even working there?
No, but I think it's like once that computer virus.
That's one of my confusions. Is supposedly Ford was working in Westworld. But if he wasn't creating those, then is this a thing that would have happened inevitably?
Well, I think, you have to think of Westworld as like, this is what...
It's like Tomorrowland, which is next to Adventureland, which is next to...
I get that they're
actually it's more, I would say the better metaphor would be, and I say this to a couple of gamers, Westworld they're still playing Unreal on the Unreal Engine, but he's tinkering with the engine, and then these other parks are on that same engine. So if he makes a change on the original one, it cascades out to the other one.
I feel like that wasn't actually shown.
What?
I feel like the connection to the other, I guess that they didn't want to recognize that the other ones even existed until the very end of the first season, but it felt like he had a special connection with this. For to suddenly have effects in the other camps feels weird to me. But my core problem though is that Dolores was like this protagonist, and now it feels like what she's doing feels very small to me.
She wasn't even in this episode.
Exactly, Maeve's quest feels even smaller. Like we're supposed to be invested in their self-discovery quest, but now it feels like, well, how consequential could that possibly be in comparison to this thing about cloning and all of that?
Well, I think similar to what we have in Game of Thrones is that at some point you have to just hold off from checking in with people because you've got other things. I mean, they spent a lot of time with Old Man Delos and that whole, I mean, they spent a lot of time with that. And so I think that probably took up most of the real estate in that show, so to speak. I think as we're talking about these various other parks and how the show hasn't shown us what cascades out, I suspect Westworld is the original because we see very young Man in Black.
Well, yeah, that's the show that made William get Delos to invest in it.
They call it Park 1.
Park 1,
So this is like the center. This is the one people are.
The OG.
This is like the Disneyland of the Disney parks.
And 40 years, 30, 40 years later, as William has become, the old man that we see, right? Crusty Ed Harris. Clearly, to stay in business, they've had to do spin-off parks, right? What other ideas could, like, ooh, come back, now we've got this new thing and that new thing.
And do all of these parks basically, because it's so much of Westworld seems designed to be like, leave your DNA behind with us. Like that's what the brothel girls are all for. Because there's that lab and Charlotte clearly has designs on
that. They're definitely touching on this whole Facebook idea of privacy and your DNA and data.
What's the Reddit thread that's like behind the scenes at Westworld? You don't know, here's why you shouldn't go, and here are the 10 things that you leave behind.
It's like the articles you see now about how if you do 23andMe or one of those ancestry things, apparently in the fine print that you're signing, they own your DNA.
And they make clones out of it.
And I don't know, they're not gonna make clones out of it, but they can do medical stuff with it, they can create databases, they can do whatever they want with it. So it's like, I think that's an interesting issue, and I'm looking forward to that kind of getting explained. And I think Charlotte seems to have a lot of agendas going on about which we know very little, and I think that's going to be she's the one I'm keeping an eye on this season as far as having interesting reveals.
She wasn't in this episode, was she?
She was not.
She hasn't been in too much so far.
Not in Bernard's present, but
she
in
was
Bernard's
not. But
past.
I did see something that somebody, which is probably maybe this is getting a little too crazy, but somebody had run a couple of GIFs side by side of Charlotte and William's daughter flicking their cigarettes the exact same way as they're talking to somebody.
Well, see, I was very confused.
Right?
If Charlotte's daughter is the one I'm thinking of, who was starting in the India version,
that's
of
William's
the camp.
daughter.
That's
William's daughter. I felt for sure that she was a younger version of the executive who Bernard killed in the first season.
I thought she was Teresa too because of the hair and
the way they held their cigarette. That seemed like she was doing an impersonation.
I didn't mean Charlotte. I meant Teresa.
Oh, right.
The one that gets killed.
So
Teresa and the daughter flick their ashtrays the same way. Not Charlotte.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, within the first 5 seconds of seeing her, I thought that this is an earlier version of her.
That was my theory too, and it was debunked.
Yeah.
Or was it?
Maybe she's a clone.
If anyone can be cloned.
Or was it? Because again, we don't know what timeline we're in at all, right? Because maybe there was a previous uprising and they've put it down and there's been another uprising.
Yeah, or like, and how long has it been since we knew the Delos one failed?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I'm using William as like a marker. So if he's old at this point, then it's closer to now, right?
You would think, except that here's how I'm going to talk
Ed
myself.
Harris has looked 60 since he was 45.
Also, here's how I'm going to talk myself into not believing everything. The Wachowskis showed us that things in the Matrix happen again and again, and Neo keeps coming back looking exactly the same every time. So maybe things have happened again.
No. Are they going to turn this into the thing like we're in a simulation?
Maybe.
Oh God.
I also
See, this is my thing with this show. I don't trust it now.
I also, to double down on what I said earlier, I found the quest for actual sentience among the hosts to be very interesting. And it just feels like a lot of the rebellion isn't really the rebellion of a being becoming itself and fighting for its rights and its existence. A lot of it is just safety protocols being turned off on robots.
For me, I feel there is a chance that Dolores or Maeve or both aren't actually rebelling, that they're doing something that's exactly in their program.
Yeah, that was the fear with Maeve at the end of the first season, and with Bernard.
And Dolores is now Wyatt, right? So
That's true.
that could be a whole other thing taking over.
Bernard made that promise to Elsie, you know, I promise I won't hurt you. First of all, you've got some issues. I don't know that you can promise that just based on mental health. But secondly, he clearly has been operating under some programming from Ford. How do we know that his program has ended?
It probably hasn't, honestly.
I am fascinated though about, we get these hints because other hosts will talk to old William and say, hey, you're still having to do this. So there's some long game happening between Ford and William, and I'm kind of excited. I want to see where that relationship has evolved over the years, right?
If you're looking forward, you're looking in the wrong direction.
Yeah, something like that, right?
So people think that might be a reference to William's attempts to use that cloning to extend his own life.
Right. Well, the riddle of the Sphinx, which gives the episode its title, is the notion that, you know, we crawl on 4 legs, we walk on 2 legs, and then we use a cane and 3. And he's trying to sort of violate that whole notion of the cyclical nature of human life by extending it permanently. And you know, we see, at least with the Delos effort, that it didn't take.
But it seemed like he was opposed to that by the end. By 149, the number 149 of Mr. Delos, wasn't he like? Maybe we should know he's meant to live.
Right? He's at least given up on that, right? Because again, we see Bernard.
Oh yeah, I don't think he's quitting. I'm just saying we just saw that the Delos one didn't
gave
work.
up on his father.
Well, and I think one question I've seen hypothesized around is, was the Delos experiment the only experiment, or is there a young William somewhere in the present? Are we going to have a scene of Jimmy Smits and him together?
Simpson,
yes, not Smith. What am I talking about? Sorry, that's weird.
Oh my God, Bail Organa's in this. That would be amazing.
Maybe they could have a scene together.
He's going to sue everybody. Yes, no, look, again, nothing is off the table with this show. You know,
or theoretically, if you can take one of those little, I think they call them chestnuts, I think they're called. Cupcakes, basically.
Look like cupcakes.
If you can take a red velvet cupcake and put a human brain in it and then implant it in a body, do we have to believe that it has to be the original body? Or could that daughter be his brain in a female body?
It could be, right? Theoretically, you could
She's
probably
really
swap
interested
out
in
those.
What was it, Westworld? I just saw something where they bring up the old riddle about, like, if you have a boat and you replace it 1 plank at a time, when it's done, is it still a new boat or not?
Yeah, was a movie we saw recently.
Okay, because it seems like that's relevant to this discussion. You know?
Yeah, I don't. I don't remember what that was.
Yeah, it's something in the last couple of weeks.
The Japanese would say yes, because that is how they restore their temples.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
With boats.
No, just replacing pieces, and it's like, oh, it's still the same one from 400 years ago.
Yeah, I think this is going to get even more confusing, and I know you're not happy with that. I'm totally okay with it, because I like to think that the creators have learned the lessons of, say, Lost,
right.
where they know, like, hey, we better deliver on some kind of ending. We better have some kind of plan, because if we write ourselves just going
Wait a
crazy.
minute, wasn't J.J. Abrams on both projects?
Is Abrams in this?
Yeah, wasn't he?
No, this is Nolan.
Jonathan Nolan.
I thought his company worked on this.
Yeah, you're right. It's a bad robot. Oh my God, bad robot.
I remember the logo.
This is a bad robot production.
And how?
That makes sense.
No, I'm not. I don't think this is a bad show. I just,
No, I enjoy it.
I don't know. Look, I wrote out all 3 seasons of The Leftovers.
Okay.
And that was a show that definitely kind of dangled things around. But I went with it and I enjoyed it. I'm not feeling it somehow with this one. And so if you don't see me in future recaps, you'll know that I have Netflix shows to catch up on.
Right. It's not The Walking Dead to me, I'll say that.
Remember that when we all left?
Exactly. It's filled with too many good actors, and it's still very intriguing. My question is, if someone drinks a shot of nitroglycerin and you shoot them, do they explode? I don't think that would actually happen.
I laughed out loud at that scene.
Well, you know,
great.
if you shoot them, they're already dead. Right. So the nitro just seems like a little
If you're a host. If you're a host, then yes, you'll explode. Right. That's in the programming. All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you for joining us. That's it for this week. We're going to come back. We'll be back next week with more Westworld. But maybe we'll find someone to replace Alonzo, or maybe we'll build a host that looks just like Alonzo.
Maybe I'll be. We won't know.
Anyway, thanks for joining us.